All right, hey everybody. Haven't done one of these in a while, but it is an absolutely glorious day. Literally, as you can see, here in the Lower Mainland, it is just absolutely beautiful. Almost don't need my puffy vest, but still a chill in the air as it's, end of February and all is as it should be that way. But anyway, it's also a glorious day because the Iranian people are looking to be freed. It looks like they're going to be free. I am so unbelievably happy for all our Iranian diaspora here in Canada. I'm sorry if too many of them choose to leave. I think they've been a great net contributors to our culture, to our country. But I am so happy that the Iranian people are freed, or probably looking to be freed. I haven't been exactly up to the minute on it all, but all the tides seem to be moving in that direction, and I'm just so happy for them, especially the Iranian women. If it's not a choice, it's not freedom of choice. It's just, that's all there is to it. If it's not a choice, it's misogyny, force, and sexism. That's what it is. Sorry. Anyway, so it's a glorious day. But on that note, there's something we need to talk about. Now I'm going to just pause this for a minute because I see a human with a dog that may not appreciate the level of rant that's about to start. So I'll give it a minute. Okay, I think that's probably sufficient. So we got to talk about this Tourette's thing, the BAFTA thing. Now I'm going to talk about it here, but it's not going to be in the title because I don't really feel like giving any more press to them. Seems to me, based on what I've gleaned so far, that a disabled man was once again shunted to the bottom of the totem pole of oppressive Olympics and was essentially told that he should be isolated and removed from society entirely. He was traumatized in a compounding kind of way that I cannot even fucking fathom. Okay, so for people that understand trauma, the thing that has traumatized him about his disabled life was made into a movie. That movie was being honored in a public space. The man who had self-isolated from public space wanted to go there to celebrate this movie that had been nominated and that ended up winning, by the way, which is essentially, this is how my life is and how I've been misunderstood because of my disability and how much harm it has done me, right? And this is like a Russian nesting doll situation where he finally goes. He has a number of episodes of tics, which I'm going to get into that in a second. But he has these tics. Apparently, the BBC edited out a few of them and just left in this one. And apparently, there's some suspicion that this was all about drawing attention to an award ceremony because award ceremonies get no attention. Nobody watches them. Nobody cares. I don't even watch any of the movies anymore. And I used to religiously watch every movie that was up and I was obsessed. But then the movies got worse and worse and worse. And then they started preaching at me about shit. And then they constantly excluded disabled people over and over and over again while screaming about inclusion. And that's all media everywhere, all the time, from publishing through to movie. The exclusion of disabled people, the misrepresentation of disabled people, the gross discriminatory perpetuation of ableism against disabled people it's a near constant, right? And it's part of being alive as a human, okay? Microaggressions are just it. Language works in implicatures. It works in implicit systems. And in order to change a language system, you have to change how people understand that the language that they are using within that system, okay? And it cannot be done by prescription. You cannot proscribe words or prescribe words. Look both of those things up. It's useful to understand that they are both things and that both exist and are very important and are equally bad, okay? Proscription is just as bad as prescription. Prescription is just as bad as proscription. Proscription, what you can't say. Prescription, what you have to say. Okay? These are censorship. They are unacceptable. And they are gross violations of freedom of speech, okay? That said, that doesn't mean we leave people out in the cold and we don't teach them about things, right? Now, I'm anti-woke because I spent years being a really fucking good ally and watching every other group get all sorts of lip services and, more importantly, funding, promotions, supports, protections in law, all manner of things, while disabled people got MAiD legislation, ever expanding MAiD legislation to the point where they're about to expand it to include conditions where they are essentially weaponizing a symptom of the fucking condition to kill people. And it's I'm sorry, it's unacceptable. All right, I'm gonna take a beat because there's someone coming and it'll give me a chance to simmer down the rant a little bit. Keep it safe for public airwaves, if not monetized airwaves. Okay, so the initial trauma, which he made a movie about, which is part of that cathartic expression, that attempt to raise awareness, that act of intense, vulnerable disclosure in the name of forwarding advocacy, okay? Which in itself might have been slightly healing, but would have also been highly triggering, right? To then have the exact same thing that defines the trauma of his life happen to him during the celebration of the thing that was supposed to be healing. If you understand even the tiniest bit about CPTSD or PTSD at all and how triggering works, I cannot fathom. I mean, I really hope that his trauma care is stellar. I truly hope that he's done a lot of trauma work and that he has access to acute crisis trauma support and care right now, because that compounding nature, that uber ironic thing that even Shakespeare couldn't dream up, and it's this metonymic sampling of disabled reality under intersectional social justice. Ask yourself, of all the times you've been demanded allyship for all these other groups here in Canada, at what point in time was allyship extended to you? And I'm not talking about, frankly, they don't even share our posts. Let's get freaking real about it. We don't even get virtue signaling allyship. So let's not pretend we do. Anyone who's disabled and tried to do advocacy in Canada on this topic online, on any topic related to disability online, particularly behavioral disability that's invisible, or mostly invisible, or misunderstood in its visibility, you know, there's no reciprocal allyship. Now, when I began to realize that I had myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is an energetic deficiency that is foundational, meaning when I reach 40% of the aerobic energy that a healthy person, and by healthy I mean anyone without myalgic encephalomyelitis, okay, I know they may not be healthy otherwise, and they may have other taxes on their energy related to a disability, but their disability isn't a foundational energetic deficiency that cuts off 60% of their capacity for energy every day, where they shove up into anaerobic energy just from washing a spoon sometimes when it's at its worst, okay? This is something that's really important to understand. So I have this energetic deficiency, and I'm mandated to be an ally, to show up, to say the things, to do the work, to be anti-racist and not just not transphobic, but promote and force others and engage in coercive acts against people that refuse to do it. And all of this is what's expected of me as an ally. But there's no reciprocity. And if you don't believe me, PWDs in Canada, I wanna just wake you up to something, okay? Don't blame anybody else. Let's start with the intersectional people who claim that they are allies, who claim that all victim groups are equally cared about and have equal kind of equity rights and all of this other stuff. And see what happens when you bring up a disability rights issue in a conversation. See what happens when someone talks about how someone said a bad word because of their disability and they should be isolated. And then you go, okay, well, do you know that in Canada we're literally killing disabled people for being sad or poor or for failing to find safe, healthy accommodations? And by accommodations, in this case, I mean housing. So we're killing people for all those reasons. Because they're a burden. Life unworthy of life. Ring any fucking bells, people. People who never stop talking about the fucking Nazis. But somehow are fucking clam shut silent over MAiD and MAiD expansions. Okay? Ha! Ha! If this doesn't open your mind to the hypocrisy involved, like, look, if James Damore didn't open your mind, maybe you're lost. If you're an autistic person and you saw what happened to James Damore and you're like, yay, that's definitely the right thing to do because women should never have to face anything that makes them feel like they're being treated with misogyny. Meanwhile, James Damore does the most fucking autistic thing that is ever possible to do. It's rooted in the definitional nature of his disability. And yet he's blamed for it as if it's a choice. Okay, this is what happens to disabled people, particularly those with behavioral disabilities, okay? The number of times I have been blamed by family, friends, strangers, teachers, everybody you can imagine for behavior that is quintessentially definitional to my disability, while at the same time saying, oh, it's not because you're disabled. It's because you did insert quintessential behavior of the disability here. And they cannot see it and they refuse to see it because they exist in a universe where their comfort matters more than your right to exist in space near them. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Now, when it comes to autism and neurotypical people and the kind of innate aversion that happens, I would really like autistic people to take a beat and realize that neurotypical culture is aversive to us as well. It is a two-way. So we talk a lot about the double empathy problem and how we really need neurotypicals to meet us halfway, which we do. Okay, I always try to interpret a neurotypical's action through the lens of a neurotypical brain and thought process, and they never extend that to me. It's possible that they don't care to, don't want to, have no impetus to, have no incentive to, don't like me enough to do so, don't love me enough to do so. All possible things, all within the realm of reason. However, and by reason I mean individual psychological reasoning, particularly in people that are stunted emotionally and can't stand or either stunted or completely lacking in any resilience emotionally, right? I mean, say what you will about mentally ill people, but if you're mentally ill and non-addicted and you've managed to survive in Canada for over a decade, goddamn, if you're not the most resilient people in the fucking world, I'd hazard. Now, that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is how important it is to focus on what Tourette's is. How important it is to not conflate that with racism, with choice, with voluntary behavior, with anything else. And when I said this incident is in itself a metonym, I mean in a number of ways. One, we must always talk about the specific condition. If we're going to bring any major public incident into the realm of discussion and talk about it from the perspective of behavioral disability or severe mental illness, highly stigmatized conditions of any kind, we need to get specific. No more blanket, oh, they're mentally ill. Okay, let's get really specific with our language. First of all, stopping the conflation undoes the simplification that leans into leftist, woke, ideologic mantras. Okay, it pushes that away. You can't do that when you get specific. If you conflate, it makes it a lot easier to create a system where disabled people are being killed and we still call it progress. We're being killed for utilitarian reasons that have been costed out by the parliamentary budget officer. Killing, I think we're at 100,000 disabled people. And yes, even end-of-life hospice MAiD track ones are technically disabled people because the technical, just because they're really old and are dying doesn't mean that they are no longer part of that category, okay? Because there are people that are 100 that wouldn't qualify for MAiD because they don't have a grievous and irremediable medical condition. Okay, so this is the point that I'm getting at. In order to be eligible, you have to have that core disabled identity. that immutable thing about which you have no control, for which the state is responsible to offer you care and supports under the fucking social contract, that is the baseline eligibility criteria. So let me be abundantly clear. MAiD is a coercive eugenics program that targets an immutable identity group, disabled people. It is being promoted as compassion, and every single mainstream media narrative about it hedges to the side of autonomy, and it's a choice. Now, when we talk about severe mental illness, that argument cannot stand. Because we do not, if we can be put in prison, in hospitals, for expressing a passive ideation about suicide, which, by the way, I was committed for 4 hours in a psych ER rubber room for passive ideation because the ER doctor couldn't be bothered to assess me properly, and they decided it was better to imprison me in a horrific place for 4 hours than have me wait in the waiting room to see the psychiatrist, or put me in another non-horrific prison-like setting. And when I say prison-like, I can't even describe it. It's so despicable. I can't even, it still activates trauma to describe it. Now, I'm not saying that psych ERs are not necessary. I am saying that I was nowhere near in a condition to be placed in one. In fact, the first time I went to the psych ER, I was exponentially more likely to need that room than the second time, but the psychs weren't as busy. So I didn't have to wait 4 hours to see one. And I didn't have some bigoted, stigmatizing, discriminatory ER doctor decide that his liability was more important than my trauma. That his liability was more important than ensuring that he did not traumatize a 23-year-old bipolar patient. Anyway. Since my diagnosis in 2007, psychiatric care has been gutted. Don't believe that any numbers that they're telling you that they're spending on this. 95% of it, and almost all the new funding, is now going to addictions care, which in no way ever includes people that are severely mentally ill without an addiction. By which I mean that if all of that funding is going to support people with addictions as well as severe mental illness, it is leaving an entire massive swath of the population in horrific straits. First, they are significantly more likely to turn to self-medication and drugs and end up becoming addicted because they are not getting the care they need in a timely fashion, and they're not getting continuity of care. They're not getting trauma care when they're diagnosed, okay? All we get at best is crisis care. Second, it's creating a huge swath of the population that's more likely to choose MAiD in 2027 when it becomes available. And they've created the circumstances for that. And this is after decades of underfunding it anyways, okay? When I was first diagnosed, I got good care because I was a student at Simon Fraser University. And so I got access to the kind of psychiatrist that could be attracted to a prestigious Canadian university, as opposed to the free clinic where they get reimbursed by MSP at whatever amount that the MSP decides is what they're worth, right? And I got 6 months with her. We did the mood charting. We got me on as low a dose as possible to maintain function. Okay, that's go start low, go slow, as low a dose as possible to manage and maintain function. That is the goal of medicating severe mental illness, okay? Eliminate dangerous symptoms, do not impair function. It's a balancing act, and it's a fucking job every goddamn fucking day. Every day you take the meds, every day you manage triggers, every day you do the self-awareness, mindfulness, active mindfulness work of assessing your state, assessing your emotional state, recognizing when you're in a state that maybe means you shouldn't go around people. You know, when I'm in a mixed episode, someone might bump me, I might call them a you know what. Well, maybe you don't know what, but I didn't know what either. It depends on the day. I won't even be that mad about it. It's just this And that's on medication, okay? And I think it's really important for people to understand this. Blaming a person with a behavioral disability for the behavior that defines their disability is discrimination, it's bigotry, it's horrifically perpetuating incredibly dangerous and harmful stigmas. And it's creating a scenario where the comfort of well and wealthy people with choices is being put above the right to exist in space while disabled. That's it. All he was doing was existing in the space while disabled. Okay? That's it. And that apparently is just horrifically, and this is the thing, right? It's all hypocrisy anyway. It's all garbage. It's cognitive dissonance nested into cognitive dissonance, nested into cognitive dissonance, and they hope that they can load your brain down so hard that you're so busy repeating the mantras and trying not to get canceled that you don't even notice how bad the dissonance is. And I can tell you, someone with an energetic disability, my goodness, did I ever get more productive when I dropped all the woke machinations to try and justify why, even though disabled people are never, ever, ever receiving reciprocal allyship, I really should still care about these other issues, and I need to put them first. And anytime it comes up, I need to defend them, and I need to where's your ball, buddy? Do you even know where it is? Where's your ball? Oh, I see. We're gonna have to go find it. Are we gonna have to do a little hunt? What a goof. Okay, go on. Go find it. I'm right here. Anyway, you can't, it's just disgusting. And if you don't see that, if you don't see how that's wrong, then I'm sorry. I just don't know what to do for you if you're disabled in this country. And you cannot see that we have been fucked. Left, right, center, all the way around. But let me tell you something. If you're all like, oh, the conservatives are the worst, at least they're talking about it. At least they're taking the side of, no, we don't think MAiD's acceptable. At least they're trying to amend it to stop it. They're trying to put guardrails in. Maybe they're using us as a political football, but I don't give a shit if it stops MAiD expansion. And I think if anyone out there is more worried about how a person appears and the words they use and, oh, they're going to be just like that guy from 10 years, as if the whole world didn't fucking change. As if every single human being on the planet that has been paying attention for the past 20 years hasn't undergone a lot of change in their own thinking, in the way they approach the world. And I guarantee you, you have, especially if you're on the left, because you've been told to. It's been this progressive shifting of the goalposts, right? And I'm sorry, but I'm tired of disabled people being left behind, and I won't do it anymore. I will not kowtow. I will not accept your woke mandates of coerced expression. I will not accept that your narcissistic abuse of people who say things you don't like is justified because you're a victim. There is no situation in which systematized narcissistic abuse is ever going to be acceptable to me, because it's not acceptable in individuals. It cannot be allowed to stand in systems. And we've essentially created one that functions like that. And if you understand narcissistic abuse and DV and you're preaching on that all the time, but you don't see that woke acts like that, then you do not understand narcissistic abuse and DV yet, right? Like, don't be mad. Go do some more work. It's really important to understand the full spectrum of what we are dealing with as disabled people in this country. Because when I say it's a Russian nesting doll of fucked either way, this is what I mean, okay? This guy is there, and his trauma gets compounded because of ignorance, bigotry, and discrimination, and nobody is willing to call it what it is, except the bad guys, apparently. I'm supposed to be on the side of the people calling him evil for his disability, the people saying that he deserves to be locked up in his house and should never be allowed out in public because of his disability. That's who I'm supposed to side with? You can fuck all the way off. All right? Because I'm not going to be doing that. I am a single issue advocate. I no longer believe that applied intersectional justice, as it has been practiced, is ever going to work, can ever work, should ever be allowed to work. Had we come up with an intersectional social justice that was built on unmet needs that could be verified by data, that created a systemic approach to the worst off first in every, category. There were a lot of ways to do this that would not have exhausted public support and bandwidth for marginalized peoples. And by that I mean the backlash to disability rights has increased 1,000-fold as the overreach on these other issues has gotten worse. The backlash to disabled people has been MAiD, and nobody caring that MAiD is happening. People lying about it that are supposed to be on the side of progressive inclusion and social justice, that call everybody else Nazis, are ignoring a program that is a utilitarian cost-saving measure designed to target people who are considered to have no utility to the state. And it is doing so under the guise of compassion while they are gutting necessary supports and services, including basic standard of care, health care, for the people who are eligible to access it. I really don't know how else to put that. Like, here's what I'm going to say. If you can hear that, if you can watch this 30-minute video, whatever it's going to be when I'm done, I may go off again if something occurs. I am a dialectic thinker, and sometimes even when I'm talking to myself or the camera, it'll spur something. Thus the ranting nature of it all. But if you can watch this video and hear these kind of framings, and you can go and verify that everything I've said is true, because it's super easy. I encourage you to go do that. This channel is a rant channel. You can call me a liar, but you better have some fucking proof, and the proof better not be, I asked ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is an idiot. And actually, I'd need to see the prompt. Maybe you found real proof using AI, but you better show me the prompt, okay? Not just the answer. And I'd need to see if you had any a priori directives for your chats in general, and if you had memory and personalization on, and all sorts of other settings that would impact the kind of answer you'd get from your AI tool. But look, here's the thing. I will accept any actual evidence, right? But if you're just gonna be like, oh, you're wrong, because I don't think what you said could possibly be true, go fuck yourself. Get your head out of the sand and do some fucking work. Listen to some stuff. Read some shit. Find out, do some confirmation. Unfortunately, we are in a media economy right now, an ecosphere. I wouldn't even call it an economy because it's not. It's an insular media ecosphere where they all parrot each other. They even repeat headlines across all of the different mainstream media in Canada. It's almost like they just literally copy paste headlines. It's been going on for years. They've had to get a lot more creative since X was bought out by Elon Musk, because people started making really, really funny memes of 25 headlines from every different, mainstream media source in Canada that were all exactly the same. And it started to look really bad for them. And there was no way to censor it or shut it down or have fact checkers shut it down or moderate it into oblivion, or, deboost it, or any of the things that they had been doing previously to make it so people didn't see things. Oh God, what was I talking about? Oh yes. So years ago, the reason I discovered that Canadian media was so biased, lying, obfuscating, omitting constantly, and narrativizing and spinning everything, was when I first heard about MAiD and MAiD expansions and what they were planning to do. It rocked me to my fucking core. It's coercive eugenics. It's unacceptable. Allowing MAiD access for severely mentally ill people is like walking up to them when they're depressed, telling you they don't deserve to live, they're unworthy, they're in so much pain, life isn't worth it, and handing them a knife and saying, you're right, here you go. On a systemic legislative level. That's what it is. It's fucking despicable. And doing so in the vacuum of care that Canada has created around severe mental illness is unconscionable. And if you don't understand, if you cannot fathom why that's unconscionable, then I don't know what to do for you. Yes, Canadians are dying. Yes, care has been problematic. But whatever problem you have as a non-mentally ill person accessing care, quadruple that. And that's what it's like when you're severely mentally ill. As I was saying, I had a psychiatrist when I was first diagnosed. And then I'd never had one again. After the first 6 months at SFU, I never had continuity of care again. Since then, my GPs, for the most part, have been in charge of any medications. And when and if I had a crisis, for the first, 8 or 9 years, I could always access really good quality care from Sherbrooke, which is a kind of inpatient outpatient ward at Royal Columbian Hospital here in New Westminster. And it was a great program. I still didn't get continuity of care, but I knew that anytime I was in a crisis, I at least had a safety net that would offer quality care. Now, there was always Fraser Health, but the first time I went to them when I was diagnosed, the doctor ignored my food allergies and severe gut issues, which later were diagnosed and medicated as, very serious IBS and other things. I get a colonoscopy every 5 years, okay? And I have since I was 23 years old. So there was something very real, very physical going on. And he just said, take the meds, it'll all go away. Next thing you know, I'm back in the ER getting put in a fucking rubber room, as I said at the beginning, because he was a discriminatory cunt. He was a bigot and a stigmatizing little bitch. Sorry, I'm so angry about it still, and this was fucking 18 years ago. But he decided to dismiss any and all physical symptoms as the bipolar disorder, and basically a suggestion, an implication that I was just trying to not comply with the medications. I just didn't want to comply. 5 days of lithium vomits later. Now, if you've never been on lithium, if you've never had lithium vomits, there's no way to describe it to you. Think of the worst alcohol poisoning you've ever had, times that by 100, and then make it violent. Okay? That's what a lithium vomit is like. It is, there's nothing like it, okay? And yeah, you know what? I stopped taking them after the 5th day of vomiting because it wasn't worth it. And then passive ideation comes back in. The busy ER doctor who can't be bothered to learn basic facts about a severe medical condition over which he has authority and responsibility shoves me in a fucking rubber room for passive ideation. Unacceptable violation of my rights, frankly. And I didn't know any better at the time. Or I would have done something about it at the time. Not that I could. You can't really sue doctors for discriminating against you in this country. Can't really seem to sue anybody for anything, frankly. It's when you're disabled, there's like the only recourse is the Human Rights Tribunal, and now everyone wants to shut them down because of this overreach situation that they feel is like, censoring speech, which I do worry about. I'm sorry, but free speech has to be permitted. It's just counterproductive. Forget about the morals and the ethics and all the rest. It doesn't fucking work. Okay, it doesn't work. It will always find a way out, or you end up in an authoritarian regime. Okay, and neither solution is actually freedom of choice, freedom of anything. And neither solution will protect disabled people. Okay, there are worse things than being called an R-word. And there are worse things than being called psychotic. And I want to tell you the number, I've known forever about the hypocrisy of the left. I would poke them on purpose because I've always known that there's no actual reciprocal allyship, that all of the non-marginal allies of the so-called marginalized people will only ever defend like the popular ones, the ones that they can scream the most about and don't ever actually have to do anything about. And so I'd poke at them. And I would unveil their hypocrisy. That was one of my favorite little pastimes whenever I'd get into a certain mood state and didn't want to go out in public, but needed to do something with that energy. And I'd go in there and I'd poke at them and I'd push them until they revealed that they were just ableist assholes. Because it took less than one poke most of the time to turn a progressive liberal telling me I'm an evil bigot for saying something like, I don't know what, James Damore didn't deserve to get fired by Google and he should have sued them for human rights discrimination. Sorry, but yes, that's what I think he should have done. Would have been a great victory for autistic rights. It would have taught Google and other tech companies that they can't enjoy the benefits of autistic employees without supporting their right to exist while autistic in space and without setting guardrails around what that means ahead of time before openly inviting the autistic person to do an autistic thing. and then punishing them for doing it? Fuck you. Sorry, I'm so angry. Okay, but anyway, my point is, there is no way out for us if we don't start becoming single issue, highly specific, highly focused, and if we don't start standing up, right? If you believe that intersectional social justice does work and can work, and you're a PWD in Canada, I'm willing to give it a go. I'm willing to do anything that'll change the tide on MAiD. But I want you to try it first and see how that goes. Start demanding allyship from all the people of color and BIPOCs and Indigenous and First Nations, and I'm using all the words I can think of in case I accidentally offend somebody, and racialized, and what are all the other words they use? I don't know, there's a whole bunch of them. LGBTQ, 2S LGBTQIA plus people, if you're in any of those, like, see what happens when you go to them and say, you know what, you guys have it pretty fucking good in this country right now. Look at all this funding you get. Look at all of these supports that are in place. Look at all of this legislative protection you've gotten. It's our turn now. We're getting literally genocided by a coercive eugenics program that is horrific and has been condemned by the UN. And I mean, we're not getting literally genocided, but the path towards a culling, a eugenics-based culling of the disability population is in place. It is a path towards a deliberate kind of eugenics. And it's the kind of eugenics that, like another kind of eugenics I can remember, is being framed as compassion and is being sold for utility's sake by using other people, like the rest of the Canadian population that waits 8 months for surgeries, to put their own self-interest of getting faster surgeries ahead of the moral interest of not killing disabled people. And that's literally what they're doing. So, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. So that's actually happening. So why don't you go start asking for allyship? You demand that allyship. You use their own language and principles and supposed morality, and you see how far that gets you. And then check back in, and hopefully it won't take you too long to realize that there's no help for us outside of single issue advocacy. And I hope you can begin to see that that includes not participating in the overreach advocacy. Okay, by which I mean, you don't settle for less, you don't accept less than you deserve, don't accept unacceptable terms, right? Like, okay, so we're not going to give you money, but we'll kill you instead. That seems like an unacceptable term. My point is, you can't demand the moon and the sun and the sky, because not only will you not get it, but it turns public opinion against you, particularly when we're economically heading into a recession, okay? The simple fact is this: the pie is not infinite. The financial pie is not infinite, particularly with our resources stuck in the ground, okay? Particularly with the influx of human beings for which we are all responsible now to keep alive, to keep healthy, to keep housed. I don't blame them. I really, unless they're fraudulently trying to get refugee status when they know they don't actually aren't eligible for asylum, and if they're taking benefits after they've been denied asylum instead of going home, that's disgusting. You're a bad person if you do that. You're just a bad person. Sorry. But I don't blame anyone for wanting a better life. That said, when we're killing disabled people instead of giving them healthcare, maybe we shouldn't be importing millions of people that also need healthcare. There's been some reports coming out about rule changes that let people bring in very, very expensively ill family members from other places, and in huge numbers. I don't have the exact data, so don't quote me on it, but I mean, I remember when they made that change, I was against it, because we cannot care for our own. That's the thing, right? It's like, let's bring in a bunch of people who've never ever contributed to the system in any way, or to the culture, or to the country. Let's do that and give everybody, including the people that were already here who were not getting the best standard of care, or even any standard of care. Let's bring in a bunch more and then give everybody even lower standards of care. That's a great solution. I'm sorry, it's really hard to believe that it's not on purpose. And it becomes harder and harder to believe that it's not on purpose, because incompetence can only spread so far. There's a concerted effort to enshrine opacity in governmental process. There's a concerted effort to enshrine censorship into legislation across every single scope that can be imagined, right? They're trying to enshrine censorship legislation in everything, in all of these different bills, on all these different subjects. They are trying to enshrine the right to die without ensuring the right to live with any quality of life. And I get it. It's so hard, right? Because the conservatives are all like, let's defund everything. And, you're like, fuck. Please don't. Please let human rights still matter. Please let's still care about disabled people. Please let's stop using autists and other disabled people and mentally ill people as a scapegoat and or a pawn. And let's start actually trying to build solutions for them, for us. Okay? Now Andrew Lawton's bringing a MAiD bill up, and he's got a parliamentary committee up, and my God, do I want to talk to them. And I really hope they're actually going to start listening to people that live it, not just orgs that are paid to talk to people who live it and barely listen. Because that's basically the shape of it. And even when they do listen and assert those needs, they don't fight when those are denied and ignored, right? That's the thing. We don't need you to collect our opinions and hand them to the government in the 21st century, because the internet does that already. It's very easy to find out how disabled people feel about these things. Okay, it's not hard to know where the problems are. What is hard is holding the feet to the fire when they fail to deliver what they promise. That is what those orgs should be doing. But they can't, because that same government, that same group of people that fail to meet the promises that they made, are the ones paying for the orgs. Sorry, it's a problem. Same with the media. The people whose feet are meant to be held to the fire are paying for the media to the tune of almost 50% of a report of every single employee's salary. Okay, like there's a 30% individual salary subsidy, which is some kind of tax credit, and then there's there's the big block subsidies and massive amounts of grant money and just so many things. If people understood. Anyway, all this to say, we're up at 42. Well, that's all right. 45 is a good amount of time, and apparently that's about my threshold for talking to my camera in the afternoon. But anyway, point is, disabled people in Canada, we're in trouble. It is time to stop bowing to the intersectional altar and start looking at reality, what it is, not what we want it to be. We cannot manifest compassion in others. We cannot reify an idyllic version of reality and claim that that's how it should be, so that's how it is, so that's how you need to make it. Otherwise, you're the worst evil in the world. That's a completely ineffectual approach, okay? No, we need to say, hey, this is the condition. This is the extent of current available services and supports. This is where they are failing. And this is the bucket of unmet need. And this is what we need in order to fill that bucket up. That is how we get to equality. That is how we get human rights protected for disabled individuals. We need to be highly specific and highly single issue. Disabled rights, and these are the unmet needs. Unmet needs buckets. Let's try to fill them up, and let's use data. Data. Hard data and a willingness to negotiate on terms, okay? Everything's broken, so just give me $2,000 a month so I can pay to fill the gaps where everything's broken. is the current solution. But the problem is there's so much money going into what's broken that they can't afford to give us $2,000 a month to fill the gaps in all the holes of what's broken. Okay, so what we need to do is start mandating narrower change based on data. Here I can show you that this population is underserved here, here, and here. This is the reason why. Here's how we fix it. Let's build a policy to fill the gap. Okay, we can't afford to fucking eat. They won't raise the rates. We're already in huge amounts of trouble in the deficit rate and the debt and all of this other stuff that I don't fully understand, but I understand the pie's not infinite and I understand humans. So that's all I need to understand to know that we can't just demand more money. So you want to blame the grocery giants for the food inflation? Fine. Make a deal. They don't get any subsidies. They don't get anything from the government. They don't get contracts until they donate some grocery cards for people that have status, legal designate status, and are in poverty. And the beautiful thing is they know who those people are. They have us tracked and followed, and they know everything about us in your province and federally, because you report provincial benefits federally in your tax return, which means they can very easily find everybody who is on pensions, who's living in poverty, while disabled, and we can start, let's get them some grocery cards to make up the difference. Let's negotiate for better supports instead. Let's negotiate for, employment programs that actually help us get employed. I don't know, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, that's it for today. That's my rant. I'm really fucking mad. And yeah, I know there's another situation related to mental illness that I have to talk about, because it's also another microcosm of the problem. So we've got this Tourette's thing where they're essentially blaming a person for being disabled in a competing rights situation, which is what happens every single fucking time there's a competing rights situation with a disabled person. Their disability is a choice. The taking offense at the disability that's mapped, known, and easily discoverable as being involuntary and uncontrollable. They're the one to blame. But the person taking offense, no. They're completely righteous and justified in shaming, stigmatizing, and punching down on the disabled person. That's the world we're in. But I don't have it in me to talk about Tumbler Ridge today. It's too beautiful out. It's too complicated an issue. The only thing I'll say about it in this video is, and that's when the next video is going to come, and it's going to be a little more new. It's going to be very nuanced and complex, but let's just say we need to get real specific about what we mean when we say mental illness. Okay? And I'll break that down in the next video. It's too beautiful a day. The Iranian people are free. Hallelujah. Though I do not believe in the praising of the Lord. I felt myself wanting to a few times today, because I know that there's a lot of faith in those who have been cheering alongside for the freedom of the Iranian people. But praise all that is divine and beautiful for you, okay?